4 murders in 4 days in a small mountain town. The people are talking about it all the time. Is it the same person or is there something else going on?
如果这一批案件破不了的话，那么我们的公安局就改成粮食局。什么意思呢？就是吃干饭的。
Welcome to today's program. On the night of May 17, 2009, in Lupanshui City, Guizhou Province, China, a case of intentional murder occurred in Kaitang Village. Local police were dispatched to the scene of the crime to investigate. Around 9 p.m., investigators arrived at the scene. At the scene of the crime, the police saw the victim collapsed in front of a private house not far from his home. Preliminary investigation shows that the victim is a male, about 17 years old. The knife in his back was caused by a single-edged weapon. Then after the investigation, the victim's name is Xiao Wen, only 17 years old. Just when the police began to investigate, an unexpected situation arose. The police rushed to the scene of the second murder not far away. After investigation, the victim in this case was also dead. Since the crime took place in a relatively dark place and late at night, the police found no witnesses at the scene. But the results of the cause of death shocked the police. After a preliminary forensic examination, the victim was stabbed 9 times, with 3 fatal wounds in the back. Left rib area inside this also has a knife through to the heart, is also enough to fatal injuries. The deceased Zhu Mao, 39 years old, in the local business. Police through the scene of the preliminary judgment. The victim is likely to be the perpetrator of a sudden attack on the dead, and the money and cell phone on the body were robbed away. Police analysis between the suspect and the victim. There must have been a chance encounter and a brief struggle process. But it may be that the two sides of the power gap, the perpetrator of the victim of the damage caused by the more serious, police investigated the scene of the 2 murders at the same time. They also investigated the residents around the 2 crime scenes. At around 10 p.m. that night, the police found a suspicious man on the street with a lot of blood on his body. After questioning, the man's name was Yang Guoyong. He confessed that he had a conflict with a neighbor and prepared a knife to take revenge. But because he couldn't find his neighbor, he killed his son, Xiao Wen. The suspect, Yang Guoyong, is 32 years old. His motive was to suspect that his neighbor was having an affair with his wife. He met his neighbor's son, Xiao Wen, in front of his house. They had an argument. Yang killed 17-year-old Xiao Wen with a knife he had prepared. Xiao Wen was seriously injured and collapsed in front of his house. Thus, the first murderer was caught. But Yang Guoyong refused to confess to the second murder, which was not far away. The 2 murders took place in close proximity to each other, and both victims were killed by a knife. Yang not only had the tools, but also the time to commit the crime. But he refused to admit that the second case was his. Is he trying to avoid it, or is he hiding something else? Whether the 2 cases were committed by him alone or by another murderer, all these need to be solved one by the police in the next investigation. The forensic report shows that the wounds of the victims in the 2 cases are obviously different. In the second case, the wounds are both wide and narrow, so it can be inferred that the murder weapon should be more than 2. But the first case was a single fatal cut, while the victim in the second case was stabbed 9 times. Through the scene investigation and trace misidentification analysis, the police believe that the first case was committed by a single person, a revenge killing, and the murderer has been arrested. The evidence of the second case shows that it was committed by 2 or more people. Accordingly, the police confirmed that the 2 cases are separate and unrelated. There are more than 800,000 permanent and transient residents in this area, and the crime squad only has 30 people to solve the murders, so the police are overwhelmed by the successive murders. Then the investigators gave up their holiday breaks. They concentrated all their efforts on the second case, in order to find clues as soon as possible. The police conducted a carpet search of the 800,000 people in the neighborhood, and on the next day, they issued a reward notice to collect clues to solve the case. At that time, the police carefully investigated the identity and social relations of the deceased. Over the past 2 days, the police's investigation has not stopped for a moment, but no effective clues have been obtained. But something else happened. There were 2 new murders in the town. This has not only strained the already small police force, more importantly, it made the police feel that the suspects were provoking the police. This also makes all the police handling the case in the heart of the police are heavily buried. A trace of haze, 2054, May 20th, 2009. Another victim was found near the warehouse of the city's industrial and mining group. The victim's name is Wang, 37 years old, is a driver engaged in long-distance transportation. He had just returned from a long-distance bus ride and was killed less than 20 meters from his home. The police immediately cordoned off the scene and started an investigation at the scene, same as the second murder. It happened at night. They also took place in a relatively remote and dark place. But the difference this time is, the victim was not robbed of his cash. 1 hour later, police investigating the scene received a new report. There was a new murder in the city. Compared to the 2 murders in the countryside 3 days ago, the time gap between the 2 murders in the city is shorter and the distance between them is closer. The 4th murder took place in the city's South Construction Road, less than 600 meters from the scene of the 3rd murder. The time of the murder was 23:17, shortly after the police car drove through the area. The victim was 39 years old, not a local. The victim was stabbed 6 times, twice in the leg, twice in the chest, and twice in the back. Forensics determined that the stab wounds were all fatal. But the wounds are both wide and narrow, so it can be deduced that more than one weapon was used to injure the victim. 4 murders in 4 days. It was like a heavy bomb exploding in a small mountain town, and it had a huge impact on the residents' bottled-up lives. The people here were in a panic, and the talk was that the perpetrators might be professional killers. In order to solve the cases, the police carried out a comprehensive investigation of rental houses, hostels, and entertainment venues in the center of the city, and also focused on station intersections. 2 days later, with unremitting efforts, the police finally got an important clue. While searching for stolen goods, the police found this cell phone of the deceased. After identification, this cell phone is the one that the 2nd victim was robbed of. Finally, the police found the person who used the cell phone. The buyer of the cell phone told the police. A man named Weibo sold him this cell phone on May 19th. After getting this clue, the police investigated Weibo's personal information. Weibo male, nicknamed Wei Laoshi, born in 1989, elementary school education. In 2006, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison for theft. Because of his age, he was serving his sentence in a juvenile detention center. But strangely, the investigators couldn't find any information about him in the data of the inmates. According to the file, the only person with a similar name is Weiwei, but Weiwei's photo is Weibo. The police decided that when Weibo was sentenced to imprisonment, he was sentenced to imprisonment under a false name, Weiwei, although he changed his name, but the police still identified him as an important suspect. To avoid alerting the police, they conducted 24-hour surveillance at his place of residence, but no sign of him was found. The police suspected that Weibo might have gone to the city. Investigators immediately rushed to Watertown. They checked all his relatives and social relations, but in the end, no trace of Weibo was found. However, in the course of the investigation, the police also learned an important fact, that is, Tu Zhongcheng, who served his sentence with Weibo after his release from prison. He often moves around with Weibo, and his behavior is very suspicious. The police now have 2 suspects with criminal records, but these 2 suspects' whereabouts are uncertain, so the police are worried that they'll run away and that they'll commit another crime. So what kind of action can the police take to catch these suspects without them fleeing or being able to commit another crime? The police have deployed officers at all possible locations of the 2 suspects. They are trying to discover the suspects' whereabouts in the shortest possible time. However, no trace of the suspects was found on any of the surveillance cameras. The police have devised a dual surveillance program accordingly. Either they don't move, or they have to arrest both at the same time. May 25, 2009. On the 9th day after the first murder, the police finally arrested Weibo, who had sneaked back to his home. At the same time, Tu Zhongcheng, his cellmate, was also caught at his home. The police then arrested Chen Kai and Chen Xiaojiang, the other 2 people Weibo told them were involved in the crime. The 2nd, 3rd, and 4th murders in a row in 4 days were solved by the police, and all 4 suspects were arrested. These 4 suspects used violence to rob others of their money and take their lives. They will surely pay a heavy price for this serious danger to society. At the same time, we should also note, in these serial cases, all 4 suspects are only 18 or 19 years old, and have also dropped out of school and committed crimes as minors. While denouncing their crimes and lamenting their fate, we should note that crime prevention, especially juvenile delinquency, is an issue to which the whole society should pay attention. This is not only our duty but also our responsibility. Thank you for watching today's program. See you next time.